In order to avenge a crime, you often first need to be able to solve it. Being a hero isn't always all about superpowers and strength. Sometimes it's just as much about having the intellect, the smarts, to know who and what to look for in your pursuit of justice. After all, you can't solve a crime if you can't even figure out who your perpetrator is. And not all villains are as obvious or bold with their approach as some others are. A lot of villains are more stealthy and will require you to bust out that magnifying glass and put on your detective hat in order to start looking for clues. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. Today we'll be taking a look at some of the more brilliant minds when it comes to our heroes in the comic book world, as we count down the top 10 smartest detectives in comics. Jinkies! Be sure to give this list a share to a fellow mystery-loving friend and stick around to the end of this list where I will have some bonus content coming your way. Alright, let's get counting. Number 10, Colleen Wing. Colleen Wing worked with Misty Knight as her partner at their private investigations office, Nightwing Restorations Limited. Both women proved to be skilled trackers, investigators, and martial artists during their cases where they mostly focused on missing persons. Iron Fist would also join up with them from time to time, but it was as a result of these two talented women working together and due to their incredible martial arts skills that they were given the name the Daughters of the Dragon. They would even go on to have their own comic series under that name in the early 2000s, which actually came back again for another limited run in 2018. Number 9, Misty Knight. Misty Knight was originally a police officer with the NYPD, graduating with honors from the police academy. She was a lieutenant when she lost her arm in an explosion. Tony Stark ended up building her a bionic arm, but she was still resigned to work a desk job due to her disability. This eventually drove Misty to leave the NYPD and form her own PI business with her friend Colleen Wing, which we previously discussed was called Nightwing Restorations. This wouldn't be all the investigative work Colleen and Misty would get up to, though. They would also go on to work together as bail bondsmen, loaning those awaiting trial bail money, but tracking them down if they refused to show up in court on their trial date. Number 8, Elongated Man. Elongated Man proved his mettle as a brilliant mind during the events of Identity Crisis. While he may have not necessarily had the right culprit in mind in regards to the murder of his wife Sue Dibney originally, he proved throughout the series with his investigative skills and deductive reasoning to be one of the greatest detective minds DC has. In fact, it was his early work as a detective in the first place that gained him recognition from the Justice League and helped him to earn his spot on the team. Number 7, Abe Sapien. Although there are many times in the Hellboy comics that Abe has been somewhat hesitant to face the outside world and intimidated by an impending sense of doom, which has seemed to haunt him since early on in his career as a BPRD field agent, he still often manages to press on, proving to be an invaluable investigator. In fact, there are many cases that likely would not have even been solved without his help, including the one later that would echo with a foreshadow of his death. The Cavendish Hall affair. After surviving the death that was foretold as a result of that investigation, he would be faced with one of the greatest mysteries of his life, his forgotten past and origins, which he would in turn manage to solve. Number 6, Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones wasn't always known as a capable PI. She originally was the costumed hero Jewel, but after a run-in with Purple Man, she decided to retire from the superhero life and put her skills to good, searching for justice in another way by becoming a private detective. Although she returned to the hero life briefly as the vigilante Nitress before starting her own agency, her time as Nitress was basically just a little bump in the road. And honestly, thank goodness for that, because Jessica Jones as a detective is a much more compelling story in my opinion, and she's a pretty great investigator. It's thanks to the series Alias that we know Jessica as more of a PI than a direct superhero. That and her Netflix series helped to paint the picture of Jessica as a hardened hero who is somewhat lost, but equally determined to fight for the justice and protection of innocent people on her own terms. Number 5, Tony Chu. Anthony Chu comes to us from the Image comic series Chu. A lot of his brilliance actually comes from his weird psychopathic abilities, which allows him to know everything about whatever food or even non-food that he ingests. For plant-based food, he's able to gain knowledge of where it's from and any pesticides that were used on it. For meat, he can discern how it was killed. Chu originally worked for the Philadelphia Police Department, but went on to use his abilities in his job for the FDA, the US Food and Drug Administration. Chu solves all sorts of crazy crimes with his weird ability, and often gains the knowledge or abilities of those animals that he eats, and sometimes the corpses that he is forced to eat. He can even ingest thrown out food to gain knowledge of blueprints and layouts for the building that it actually came from. Number 4. Velma Dinkley. That's right, the famed brilliant Velma of Scooby-Doo. You might be thinking, but wait a minute, Scooby-Doo is a cartoon, not a comic, Amanda. But if you are, you might be surprised to find out that you're kind of wrong. Scooby-Doo is actually both a cartoon and a comic series. In fact, they have multiple comic series about the Scooby Gang. And guess who is making Scooby comics right now? DC, which means DC really does have an amazing wheelhouse of brilliant detectives on their hero roster, especially with Velma included. Velma is usually the brains behind all of the Scooby Gang's solved cases. She's usually the one who helps to piece all the clues together and solve the mystery. So while she can't do it without the rest of her friends and teammates, she definitely stands out as the brightest member of the team. Number 3. John Constantine. Well, John Constantine might not be the kind of detective you think of first when you think of the smartest, with him being, well, not as put together as some of the other detectives on this list. When it comes to manipulating people or demons, there is likely no one smarter than Constantine. John Constantine remains one of the trickiest characters around when it comes to talking demons into doing just what he wants, usually without them even realizing they are being fooled and falling right into Constantine's traps. He's basically the Odysseus of occult detectives. Many might fixate on his magical abilities, but his tongue is probably one of the most dangerous weapons that he wields. Hey, don't you go there. Number 2. Detective Chimp. Bobo T. Chimpanzee is Detective Chimp, one of the best detectives in the world, despite being a chimp. Detective Chimp is often dressed as Sherlock Holmes and made his first comic book appearance in Adventures of Rex the Wonder Dog, issue 4 in 1952. Why a chimp for one of the most brilliant minds? Well, this is likely because back in the day, covers and stories featuring apes sold really well, which is why we have so many capable ape and monkey characters in comics today. Detective Chimp has solved all sorts of challenging mysteries and was considered to be the best detective in the world by Dr. Fate. He is a highly intelligent chimpanzee who is capable of communicating with various species and whose intellect has been classified as greater than 98% of the Earth's human population. Wow. Number 1. Batman. We can't have a smartest detective list without including Batman on it, of course. Batman is the comic book detective. Despite just being a man in a bat suit, he has one of the most brilliant and most skilled minds on the planet. He is a master detective, and while Detective Chimp was ruled as the best detective by Dr. Fate and potentially the world of magic, I guess, it doesn't necessarily mean that Chimp is smarter than Batman, or even that Dr. Fate was right. After all, magic doesn't know everything. Even when you think Batman maybe isn't the greatest detective, he proves you wrong. Like in Batman R.I.P., when it seemed that he had fallen prey to the Black Glove's trap, he actually hadn't. The Black Glove thought that they had eliminated him, but he dug out of his own grave and returned to prove them wrong, revealing that actually they had fallen prey to his plot, as he had known about their plans and Jezebel Jet's true allegiance the entire time. What a twist. Even I was shocked. Thank you for watching, Nerd Squad. Who are some of your favorite comic book detectives? Who do you think is the best or smartest detective in comics? Which hero would you like to see running their own detective agency who hasn't yet already? Let us know in the comments below. And speaking of comments, it's time to turn to some comments from one of our latest videos, Top 10 Scary Punchline Facts. Bravado Valen comments, Punchline is almost a female version of Victor Zsasz and Joker in one. Ooh, I could see that comparison. She's definitely got the murderous edge and passion of Zsasz, but she shares some of the love of chaos and torture with the Joker. Christopher Adora responds, gasp, holding hands? How scandalous. Lol. Except that it actually is a little scandalous, since this is the only real insight we've gotten into whether or not their relationship goes beyond professional. I mean, professional in quotes, because I'm not sure if I consider the Joker a super professional guy, even as a criminal, though Punchline sure seems to have a professional air to her. And that's all the time we have for comments today. Be sure to comment below for a chance to have your thoughts and reactions shared in a future video. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host, Amanda McKnight, reminding you, as always, to stay nerdy, YouTube.